welcome back into the Lions 24/7 podcast. I am Tyler Donahue. Happy to have you along with us again. Episode number 2 of game week number 5. Penn State nearing a trip out west to play UCLA. The Bruins are winless. They've got an interim head coach situation. We just found out on Tuesday that they've made an offensive coordinator change. You're going to learn more about UCLA's squad in just a bit. We're going to bring on one of our Bruins reporters from within the 24/7 Sports Network. I'll tell you this ahead of time. We recorded on Tuesday evening, so that was before the offensive coordinator change took place. I don't think it's going to impact much of the outlook that he brought to the table, but you'll learn more about Penn State's Game 5 opponent coming up. We've certainly worked our way through the aftermath of Penn State's double overtime loss against Oregon. We had a lengthy post-game podcast up in the late morning or late night, early morning hours, Saturday going into Sunday. We regrouped on Monday coming out of James Franklin's weekly press conference. Mark Brennan and Daniel Gallen join me to kind of look at what's next moving forward. We have a lot of content over at the site. Daniel Gallen has a story up on Katron Allen's strong start after we had a chance to speak with Katron on Tuesday morning. I have a story up on the opposite end of the pendulum about slumping senior stars in Drew Aller and Nick Singleton, working through some of what have been the issues thus far for them, what it might mean moving forward. That story's over at Lions 24/7. And on Wednesday, just a little bit later in the week than I would have liked, but we got it up, our breakdown of snap counts and player notes from Penn State's Big Ten opener. There were some really fascinating developments, particularly with the elimination of rotations in certain areas like the offensive line and at safety. So a lot waiting for you over at Lions247.com. We're going to continue to give you coverage into Wednesday afternoon and the evening as well. We're back on the practice field. We'll get a look at the Nittany Lions. We'll get to hear from James Franklin. So you know what to expect from our coverage. For now, though, we're going to shift gear over to recruiting. Obviously, Penn State wasn't able to capitalize as they would have liked in that showdown against Oregon with the bright lights of the whiteout, but they were able to get more than 100 prospects, a ton of targets, ton of five-star talent, top 100 recruits in the building. And we have a lot of feedback on that from Tyler Calvaruso, who is our resident recruiting insider. We bring Tyler on board right now. And Tyler, before we get to that discussion about the whiteout and the impact, and there were some flip targets on campus as well that we got to get to, right as we were sitting down to record this podcast on Wednesday afternoon, 24/7 Sports updated their top 24/7 rankings for the 2027 class. And notably, there is a confirmed five-star who's committed to Penn State. We've viewed him as a five-star for a long time. He has been a consensus five-star in the industry. 24/7 Sports is now on board. Kamon Spell at running back.
Yeah, pretty much a formality. Me and you have been calling him a five-star for a while now. He's been a five-star in the composite for a while now. I think every article I've written on Kamon Spell for like the last few months, five-star running back commit. But now he has that distinction over on our end at 24/7. It's well-deserved. I think it's frankly pretty impossible to miss if you just watch Kamon Spell's film. It's been a rocky junior season for him for no fault of his own. I mean, he kicked things off in resounding fashion. Some of the most dominant fashion I've seen from a Penn State commit in a little bit. Nearly 300 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, a 98-yard kick return for a touchdown. But then he hurt his ankle the next week. Tried to come back the following week against a really good Thomas Jefferson team out in Western Pennsylvania. Tweaked the ankle injury early in that game, wound up missing McKeesport's next 2 games, but he got back on the field this past weekend, and what did he do? He ran for 3 touchdowns. So that should tell you a lot about the talent level here. I think everyone who listens to our podcast and follows Penn State football and Penn State football recruiting really to any degree knows what Kamon Spell is capable, but he's capable of between the white lines. And, Penn State's still fighting tooth and nail to hang on for him. Spell has said a lot of the right things, a lot of good things about where his commitment to the Nittany Lions stands. He visited for the Villanova game. That was a really overwhelmingly positive experience for all parties involved. He said a lot of good things about running backs coach Stan Drayton after that visit. Got back to campus for the whiteout game over the weekend. Was there early. Some pictures made the rounds on social media, him at the front of the College game day crowd. He loved everything about that experience. So we'll see where things go. It's a long way between now and the early signing here for that 27 class. These schools are not going to stop recruiting Kamon Spell. We'll see if he winds up taking any visits elsewhere. But it's a great day for him. He's got that 5th star on our end now. So
Yeah, and big things ahead for his football career. Penn State obviously hoping to get him to the finish line in December 2026, sign him, add him to a pretty impressive list of in-state running back talent that's come here to Happy Valley and has found success. But let's talk about the recruiting vibes beyond the commits who were on campus, and there were plenty of those. Let's talk about guys who were committed elsewhere and still made the trip to Beaver Stadium on Saturday to see this matchup. Talk us through who those guys are and what impact might have been made for Penn State.
I'll start with Carter Gooden, top 100 defensive lineman out of Tabor Academy in Massachusetts. He's a Canadian. He's a native of Canada. So one of those guys who boards at Tabor. He's committed to UCLA. And I bring up the Canadian aspect of it and the boarding aspect of it at Tabor because it's not easy. It's easy for Carter himself to say, hey, look, I want to visit here, and there. But with his mother being in Canada, she has to work around her schedule with, everything employment-wise, get some time off and make these visits with Carter Gooden as he goes through really a final decision-making process because his process changed the second UCLA moved on from Deshaun Foster as its head coach. So he gets back to Penn State over the weekend. Seemed like it was a really good visit for him. Again, I know people are going to harp on the outcome, and that is what it is, but a lot of these kids who visited, they still had a good time. They look bigger picture, and, Gooden is one of those guys who he has reiterated that, hey, look, I see a fit on Penn State's defensive line, regardless of what happened on the field against Oregon, and I see a potential future with the program. Now, you got the sense going into Carter Gooden's visit that Penn State was in a really strong position to get this one done, and I still believe that to be the case. But this isn't over. There's more to this picture than just Penn State trying to flip Carter Gooden. We got some SEC programs in the mix, some other Big Ten suitors that were around with Gooden the first time around while he was still an uncommitted recruit. So, there's an NIL aspect of this as well. UCLA offered Carter Gooden significantly more than a lot of his other suitors when he picked the Bruins. That wasn't the driving force behind his decision. But I think as his recruitment and his potential flip process goes on, that's going to be an element of it that we need to monitor as well. So Gooden, I would label him as, quote unquote, the most important flip target who was on campus over the weekend. There were a few others that we're going to touch on now. An interesting one Penn State fans are familiar with, Syracuse offensive tackle commit Roseby Lubintis. And it was not too long ago that Roseby Lubintis was a Penn State commit. And me and you were discussing, his conditioning and his upside given his massive frame. Penn State hasn't stopped recruiting him after his flip to Syracuse in July. The staff, I think that kind of tells you something about what they think about his long-term potential and where they could get him physically and technically as an offensive tackle. Penn State wants to generate a flip back from Lubintis. They've worked really hard at it. I think getting him back to campus for the whiteout was a step in the right direction. And now we will see where things go. One of the most interesting elements of Roseby Lubintis' visit for the whiteout for me was seeing him interact, some of the pictures of him interacting with the commits, guys he's known for a really, really long time. Sometimes you flip and it's not received all that well amongst your peers that were in the class that you left behind. Lubintis, knowing the kind of kid he is, clearly he didn't burn any bridges in that Penn State recruiting class. He looked really, really happy to be back around those guys. Those guys look really, really happy to be back around him. I mean, we're not going off vibes when it comes to generating a flip. There's more to it than that, but we'll see what comes about on that front. If there's one thing to take away from it, it's that Roseby Lubintis is not off the Penn State board. He's not off Phil Trotwell's offensive tackle board. He's very much on it, and they're going to continue working on him to see if they can get him back in this class before the early signing period rolls around in December. Now, going to the secondary now. We started in the trenches. It's only right we end in the secondary. Danny Odom, top 100 Nebraska cornerback commit. He's a Pennsylvania native from the Farrell area. He plays his prep ball down at the First Academy in Florida in the Orlando area. Penn State hosted Odom for a late June official visit, a midweek visit before that final OV weekend. He wound up going to Nebraska after Penn State. Huskers got that one across the line. He's another kid the Penn State staff did not stop recruiting. Terry Smith has stayed on him as an important cornerback target. We're still waiting for a little bit of feedback directly from Odom and asking around. Seems like he's still pretty solid with Nebraska. I think Penn State did a lot of the right things with Odom while he was on campus, but it seems like he likes where things are heading with the Huskers. So kind of 50-50 on whether or not Penn State's going to be able to make a move there. We saw them generate a flip in the secondary last cycle with Josh Johnson. Not sure it's going to happen with Odom, but it's a storyline to monitor. Penn State also hosted Jay Timmons, in-state kid, son of former Steelers linebacker Lawrence Timmons. He's committed to Florida State. I think the Noles are still in a pretty good spot to hang on to that commitment. Timmons made the trip with Khalil Taylor, Gabe Jenkins, guys he's close with who are going to be at Penn State in that 27 class. Obviously, they've been working on him, trying to get him to join him in State College, but I think Jay Timmons is pretty solid with Florida State right now.
And just to double check, each of those flip targets we're discussing, we're talking about the 2026 cycle. So we're talking about a 2-month window here between now and when they're going to sign with the program, correct?
Yeah, all 26s.
Okay, so I challenge you to do something that's pretty difficult. First off, what was the final tally, as far as you can gather it, of prospects who were in Beaver Stadium on Saturday?
I think it was over 200 in the end. And I know sometimes, like, there you see programs, they'll host like large groups from certain schools, and that kind of inflates the numbers of kids who visit on a given game. That's fine. I mean, some of the lesser games, Penn State hosts local groups from smaller schools just to get those kids that experience. So it happens everywhere. This was not an inflated visitors list by any stretch. I think that every kid that we confirmed with and listed throughout the week leading up to the game and then confirmed with afterwards that they visited carried some sort of relevancy. So it wound up indeed being as loaded of a visitors list as we anticipated. And again, probably the most talented visitors list James Franklin has hosted in his tenure as Penn State's head coach.
We've got a gallery up as well, photos of tons of these guys, dozens of these guys, and their faces as they walked into Beaver Stadium out of that tunnel lit up before the game. They got to see quite the show pregame. Obviously not what Penn State hoped to put on the field for much of that matchup, particularly for the first 3 quarters. But you hope that a lot of the moment sticks with those guys in a positive way moving out of it. So what I challenged you to do was, from that long list of recruits, to focus on 5 for us, because we don't have an 8-hour podcast to work through the rest with you. So 5 guys, start wherever you'd like, and tell us why they're on this list, because you could have gone in so many different directions.
I'll tell you this, it was not an easy decision-making process, which, again, I think it speaks to the depth and the overall quality of the list. When it's hard for me to sit down and center on 5 guys that Penn State truly took a step forward with and made a profound impact on, it says a lot about, I think, one, the staff, the work they put in to set all of this up, and not just set it up, I think, to make the most of a loss, a gut-wrenching loss at that. There are a lot of emotions after a game like that, but the staff, I think, still did the best job that it could putting on.
Let me give you the unsung heroes of moments like this, because I've been in this situation. I haven't done it necessarily on this scale where Penn State's playing a top 10 showdown in Beaver Stadium, but I've worked for a recruiting department where you're hosting guys, the game goes the wrong way, and you got to figure out how to deal with that and how to figure out sending them home at least somewhat happy, certainly feeling satisfied with the experience. And that's when the recruiting staffers versus the position coaches got to take the lead, because the position coaches are in a very emotional locker room. They're very emotional themselves. They've been engaged in coaching. So you got to give your tip of the cap to the recruiting department folks involved here. Kenny Sanders, Alan Zamitis, Slim, whoever you want to name on that list. It's a pretty long one at this point. But it's difficult to deal with after an emotional loss, because you can't just walk up to the kid and say, get out of here. We need some time to cope with everything. You got to go up. You got to smile. You got to talk to mom and dad. You got to say, drive safe, come back. We love you. All those things. You got to be the one who gives them that lasting impression. And that's not easy to do after a game like that. So I'll just put it out there.
No, you're right. It's kind of like they're the crisis team. You're making sure that these kids, they don't leave town with a sour taste in their mouth. You make sure they don't leave town feeling ignored or slighted in any way possible. It helps that Penn State, I know I say this often, but it helps that Penn State has a charismatic recruiting department behind the scenes, because I don't think I can't say every college football program. There are a lot of good recruiting staffs in college football, no doubt about it. But the collection that Penn State has, we interact with those guys. We know what they're about as people. Forget about recruiting. They're very charismatic guys. They could talk to anyone in any setting. So it makes sense that it's a group that could kind of dial things down and help, reel things back in after a tough loss. And they did that with these 5 guys, I would say, for sure. 1 on offense I'm going to go through, 4 on defense. We'll start on offense with Matt Gregory, the electric wide receiver, in-state kid, top 24/7 prospect, one of the faster wide receivers in the 2027 class. All the feedback from his visit has been positive. I said going in, I've had the feeling that Penn State was pacing Matt Gregory's recruitment. I still have that feeling coming out of it. He still has visits to make. There's still a long way to go between now and when he comes to that final decision. I think things will go through official visits in asking around. But I like where Penn State is sitting in that recruitment right now. It's a competitive one. Programs like Michigan, Nebraska, Syracuse, they've all given Gregory a lot to think about throughout his recruitment. I think they're going to continue to give him a lot to think about throughout his recruitment. But guess what? The Penn State staff is going to do that in its own right as well. His relationship with wide receivers coach Marcus Hagans is a good one. I think it's one that is helping Penn State a lot here because, it's not just the in-state angle and the potential to stay close to home. Gregory likes Hagans. He thinks he can learn and develop under him, and he sees a fit in Penn State's offense. That's obviously a plus for a big-time wide receiver target. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, think of the guys I think Penn State really, really helped itself with during the whiteout game and the visits that took place. We'll start on the defensive line with another in-state kid, edge rusher Abraham Cisse. I think his recruitment, I've kind of been pounding my fist on the table for him for a little while in terms of rankings and just overall prospect profile because I love him. I think he's a really, really good edge rusher. I think he's going to be a high-level player at the next level. He's starting to get those offers, man. He got an Ohio State offer the other night. Penn State hosted him over the weekend. They continue to do really, really well with Abraham Cisse, and it's an on-field thing because he likes Deion Barnes, but he loves Deion Barnes from an off-the-field perspective as well. He thinks Penn State's D-line coach, knowing that, and this is the case for a lot of kids, but Cisse, since the one we're talking about, feels, they grew up similar backgrounds. He's a guy that kids can relate to. Cisse feels that he'll be taken care of off the field by Barnes if Penn State is a place that he chooses to play. So I like where the Nittany Lions are at. Frankly, I contemplated a crystal ball pick for Cisse in the week leading up to the whiteout, but there were some whispers going around that, hey, Ohio State might offer. And that doesn't necessarily make an offer from the Buckeyes a tipping point, but you want to see how it's received and you want to see if he visits. And Cisse told me he's exploring making it out to Columbus for a visit. So we'll see where things go. He's a top 100 recruit in our rankings now. I think it's well-deserved. I think he's going to have the true notoriety of a top 100 prospect in terms of offer sheet. And Penn State is going to have a big-time say in the way that recruitment plays out when it's all said and done. Moving down south a little bit, another elite edge rusher in that 27 class is Rashad Streets from Raleigh in North Carolina, plays at Millbrook High. He hadn't been to campus in a little bit. He attended a spring practice session early in April, wasn't able to get back during the summer for Lash Bash or any of the camps. Penn State wanted to get him back for the whiteout, pushed to make that happen, succeeded in doing so. I think it was important to get him back and looking at Penn State's defensive line and looking at the unit as a whole, because it's one thing to see it in a spring practice setting, especially considering Jim Knowles was still getting his defense installed. You saw a little bit more of a finished product from that defense on Saturday night. That's really what Streets was looking for. And he continues to be thoroughly impressed by the manner in which Penn State's defensive ends and edge rushers are developed by Barnes and the rest of the staff. So I think even though he's not a regional kid, he's the lone non-regional kid on this list that I sent over to you. I think Penn State has staying power with Streets. The SEC programs in the mix are definitely going to have something to say about that. Ohio State is actually going to get Sheets on campus for a visit in early November when the Nittany Lions roll into town. So the Buckeyes are going to have something to say about it. But Penn State made a strong impression, maybe clawed its way back just because he wasn't around for a little bit, clawed its way back into that top group of schools for Streets that are standing out to him right now. Linebacker, I really like Brandon Lockley out of St. Joe's Prep. He's a composite 4-star prospect. He's an important target for Dan Connor on that 27 linebacker board. Ironically, because he's a kid who's been around a lot. He's visited Penn State a bunch throughout his recruitment. Saturday night was his first Penn State game. When he told me that, frankly, I didn't realize it. It wasn't something I was expecting. He picked a heck of a time to go to his first Nittany Lions game, and he was really impressed by everything that the whiteout entailed. More importantly for him, kind of like same deal with Streets, getting another look at Jim Knowles' defense, because he's heard a bunch about how the Penn State staff feels he could fit at linebacker. But he saw guys like Amari Campbell running around, Tony Rojas running around, making high-level plays for Penn State throughout the night. He feels that he can do that. So I think Penn State's clearly leading for Brandon Lockley right now. He's going to visit Michigan. He's going to visit Tennessee. He's going to visit Syracuse before the fall comes to an end. But Penn State is setting the bar pretty high right now for the in-state standout, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. I'd say it's going to continue to be the case for Carter Bonner as well, top 24/7, D-back from the Pittsburgh area, Western PA kid. So, Penn State is going to go after him. He's one of the best in the region. Penn State likes him at safety, but he's got some positional versatility to him. He can really give you quality reps at a lot of different places in the secondary. I actually got the chance to catch up with Bonner early this morning, and He used one word to describe his Penn State visit. He called it a special one. He's got really good relationships with the staff. Program culture and people are two really crucial aspects of Carter Bonner's recruitment, and Penn State has checked every box in that regard since it offered early in his prep career all the way back in October 2023. So this has been a long-standing pursuit for the Nittany Lions. It's one where I believe they're faring quite well. I mentioned a potential crystal ball pick for Cisse earlier, and I think when it comes to Bonner, I'm probably closer on that end right now. I think Penn State is really setting the tone in this recruitment. So those are my 5 majority regional guys. But there is one thing I want to say. I do think in catching up and speaking with some of the recruits who visit from outside of the region, it kind of goes into the whole more so national approach now. Regional recruiting, Pennsylvania recruiting is going to be the lifeblood of Penn State's program, but they made a profound impact on guys like Allen Evans, who's a top 50 cornerback from Kentucky. You know, you hear a Kentucky kid, you think they're just going to go to the SEC, that Penn State's not going to be a player, but Penn State has done well with some of these non-region kids. And those who visited for the whiteout, I mean, number 1 quarterback in the country, Elijah Haven, they stamped themselves as contenders. So I think that's noteworthy as well.
We will follow your coverage. I know you're not done yet.
No,
you still got a lot from
me.
that notebook to empty out. I think between you and our national recruiting analysts who have helped chime in with some coverage, we got to be at like 30 articles about.
I counted actually. We're up over it.
Okay, I'm not surprised. So if you have VIP access at Lions 24/7, you can dive in. I know it's not necessarily something that people have been rushing to read on a week like this, recruiting feedback, but Tyler and the crew have been really diligent with their reporting. So if you're ready to kind of resurface, catch your breath, move on from the last game a bit, and see what happened with the recruiting scene with the whiteout and the aftermath there, it's all waiting for you at lions247.com. I promise you, this was a very small sample size of the feedback, just talking about a few of these guys and the flip targets. Tyler, keep up the great work. Penn State is not home this Saturday, the first time they're hitting the road, so we're not going to have a bunch of recruits to talk about coming out of this game, but we'll see if they can help themselves on the field. And we'll get back with you next week to learn the latest about whatever's going on in Nittany Lions recruiting efforts. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
This episode of the Lions 24/7 podcast continues with focus on the Nittany Lions' next opponent. I know there is still a ton of attention being paid to what transpired between Penn State and Oregon, but we got to put that in the rearview mirror, put that one in the past. Next up for the Nittany Lions, winless UCLA, 0-4 on the season, on their second head coach of the season on an interim basis. And we got a lot to break down with Mike Regalado, who covers the Bruins for 24/7 Sports. Mike, good to get you back on. We heard from you last season before UCLA made their trip to Happy Valley. This time around, Penn State pays a visit to Pasadena. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always great talking to you, and especially about a team that's actually good.
Well, people around here aren't so sure anymore, but yeah, I assure you it's a pretty solid squad heading out in your direction.
Last week, Kurt, yeah.
They have national championship ambitions, and the Nittany Lions are going to try to prove as much as they can against this particular UCLA team, which I don't know how much we'll all feel we learned coming out of the game, but certainly they want to see a clean performance, a dominant performance, and we'll set the stage here. Nittany Lions are favored by more than 3 touchdowns, a 25.5-point favorite heading out to Pasadena. But we got to get up to speed on where the Bruins are, because the Deshaun Foster era came to a close a couple weeks ago. It lasted a season and a few games beyond one season. Talk us through the collapse of that Foster regime, why it had to happen, and ultimately why the move was made so early in the season before this team even got to Big Ten action.
It's just weird because there was some momentum. Just a quick history. February 2024, Chip Kelly bails. So UCLA is late in the process, and athletic director Martin Jarman has to hire somebody. And he interviewed several candidates, but ultimately landed on Deshaun Foster, which half the fan base was like, why? And the others were, okay, let's give him a chance. 5-7 under, with Eric Bieniemy running the offense, Akeke Malloy running the defense, and 5-7 actually not horrible for what was left. UCLA then at the end of the season jettisoned Eric Bieniemy, got Tino Sinceri from Indiana, and all of a sudden things were looking up. Like, oh wow, okay, Foster's serious. Go gets a few other coaches, does pretty well in the transfer portal, gets freaking Nico Iamaleava, former 5-star quarterback that took Tennessee to a playoff game last year. And it seemed like things were going to be just absolutely, looking up for UCLA. Like I even hoped for maybe 7-8 wins, and well, technically they still can make that. But that's not happening considering what is remaining on UCLA's schedule. So yeah, we get into games. The first game against Utah, and that was like, okay, that was a good Utah team. They kicked UCLA's butt. All right, bounce back against UNLV, loss. An embarrassing loss to New Mexico, and that was basically it. UCLA was expected to beat New Mexico by, I think the line was 16 and a half points, lost by, what was it, 25? So it wasn't good. So yeah, immediately everybody knew that this experiment was not, it's not on the right path. And even though UCLA did well, made headway with recruiting, it's basically, I hate to use the phrase rip it up and start again, but they pretty much have to do that. And it seems like it's going even further to maybe they're doing that with the athletic department. That is yet to be seen. But right now, yeah, UCLA is working with Tim Skipper, who was also an interim coach with Fresno State, and he's working with the team right now. They're still going with Tino Sinceri calling the offense. Akeka Malloy, who it was said that he wanted to take the bullet for Deshaun Foster. But Foster was still fired, and Malloy thought that he was just, he was doing a disservice to the program. So he left 2 days after, I believe, that Foster was fired. So Kevin Coyle, who I believe was with Rutgers or Syracuse, he's come in to help run the defense.
Yeah, I think Franklin told us in his press conference this week, this guy was like with Syracuse like 3 weeks ago. He was part of the Syracuse program 3 weeks ago. Now he's going to be coaching the defense against Penn State in Pasadena.
Yeah, and then we go to Northwestern last week, a team that UCLA could have beat actually, but it just fell to, everything's just falling apart, and UCLA lost 17-14. So now we're going to watch this UCLA football team take on a Penn State team, top 10 team. Unfortunate loss against the Ducks on Saturday. I think you said that the line was 26 points. I think that's way too low. And basically, we're going to see how tough UCLA is against just an absolute stud of a football team. So I don't exactly know what UCLA can get from this game, but basically, they could, obviously they still get play time. They could still prove themselves. Nico has actually been pretty freaking good. I compared his stats to Drew Alar, and they're actually pretty similar. The only difference is that Penn State actually has wins, and UCLA doesn't have a win yet. So that's where we are program right now. So.
Well, let's go back to last week, because they went on the road to Northwestern. They lost by 3 points. I believe they were like a 6.5 point underdog. When you look at that 60 minutes of football that the Bruins put out there, were there any notable differences? Because it was the first game post firing with Deshaun Foster. You've got Tim Skipper in the saddle now. Anything that you picked up was like, oh, that was different, or oh, that was improved?
They wanted to run. It was noticeable, but even. Tim Skipper said that they wanted to utilize Nico Iamaleava's legs more, because that's basically been one of the only successful parts of the offense. Defense actually looked a little better, and it was interesting because Skipper said that Coyle installed an entirely new defense, verbiage, plays, everything in that 1 week. So it was going to be interesting to see how the players react to it. And didn't start off well, but second half they shut out Northwestern. It's just unfortunate that the offense could not get anything going in their final two drives to try to make that comeback, to try to maybe give a sigh of relief. But no, UCLA falls to 0-4, and now it's on to facing Penn State.
You've mentioned Nico a couple times. One of the most hot topics of this offseason was what unfolded for him down at Tennessee. People thought he was going to be one of the faces of the Vols this year, chasing an SEC title, chasing a college football playoff return. Instead, he ends up out in California with UCLA. Why did he go to UCLA, from what you've gathered? How has it gone so far with that marriage? And what exactly is he capable of doing against Penn State?
The reason is because he's from here. He's from Downey, which is about 10 miles, 10 15 miles east southeast of Los Angeles. This is home. He has family here. He's just said that it just didn't work in Tennessee, and this is this seemed like a good fit for him. And we'll see how it all goes at the end of the season. But basically, it hasn't gone well offensively, though I've been pretty vocal about saying that it's not on him. There's offensive line issues. Yeah, he's clearly had some issues with overthrowing the ball or missing targets. It's sorry about the noise, but he's been doing it all. He's the one. He's been pretty decent passing, but he's been running for his life. And yeah, he's taken hits, which personally I think that's probably not the best way to go, because if he gets taken out, well then UCLA's biggest offensive threat is gone, and then they're going to have to go to a backup. But at the same time, Tim Skipper's right. He's the only one that's getting things done. Using his legs is helping the Bruins to actually get downfield when it's just hard to get yards, especially on the ground. UCLA's running backs, who have been pretty good, are just not able to find holes, not able to make explosive plays, not able to make that big play. So it's just really tough. It's sluggish for UCLA right now. And sorry for all the noise. I had to relocate because there's better signal out here.
We're getting the nice sounds of Los Angeles. It's nice background noise for us here.
Welcome to LA, everyone. But and credit to him, he hasn't transferred. I don't think there should have been a reason why he transferred. As far as Tim Skipper said, nobody has put in any transfer request or redshirt requests. UCLA just had their fourth game this past season, so it was a chance for players to put in a redshirt. So far, nobody's put it in, from what Skipper has said. So at this point, it's basically, hey, let's see how this team can get better. But right now, UCLA is on the road to 0-12.
Yeah, good point too on the potential exodus with the roster right now. For people who aren't familiar, when you have a head coaching change, there's a window. You can jump in the portal. You can kind of just remove yourself from the situation if you really wanted to, and take a red shirt and try to start fresh the next season. I guess we haven't seen the roster come unraveled in that way. And just checking out the statistics a little bit, Nico is the leading rusher, 204 yards. He has 19 more carries than anybody on the roster. As a passer, 65% completion. 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, been sacked 9 times through 4 matchups. When he does look around him in this offense and try to find a playmaker or two, who are those guys? Who are some potential pests that Penn State needs to deal with on defense?
Definitely. Penn State should have no problem with UCLA's running game. So they're going to have to try to go to the air, and beyond Nico running for his life. He has some really good receivers. Titus Mokieo, Atimilala, Quasi Gilmer, who's proven to be a stud. It's just they just can't get a passing game going, especially when he's pressured so many times. And as you said, 9 sacks already. That's not helpful to your quarterback or to the offense or to getting the ball downfield. But Gilmer, Titus, and Mikey Matthews, he didn't really show up last game, but he has some potential to make some big plays. All 3 wide receivers.
When we look across the field on defense, what are the obvious weaknesses right now for UCLA on that side of the ball? What are some potential strengths or silver lining on that side of the ball as you work through these first 4 games?
Tackling has been a huge issue. It looked like that was shored up a little bit last weekend, but they've got to do so much better against Penn State. Katron Allen is just an absolute beast, and I fear for anyone that gets in his way, especially because UCLA just is not good with rush defense. It's funny, since the beginning of, even including last year, going back to the beginning of the Chip Kelly era, UCLA has had a really good rush defense. Top 20, I would say, during that time, and they would have bad to mediocre pass defense. Well, that's flipped. UCLA's pass defense has gotten a lot better, and guys like I'm blanking on his name, Cole Martin, Key Lawrence, Kanye Clark. These are guys that can make plays. Sometimes like we saw last week, sometimes they would make a dumb play, get a penalty, but then they'd come right back and make a good play that would help out the defense. Like, oh, okay, we got some ball players here. So right now, I would say like UCLA's pass defense is what their strength is, but that's not going to help when you have a really good running game from Penn State.
Yeah, that erosion of UCLA's run defense is notable. Last year, Penn State was held under 90 rushing yards. The game was 27-3 in the final minute. It ended up 27-11, but it was closer than people expected. I think it was a decent performance for UCLA, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But that seems to have gone awry for them. Certainly, and as you mentioned, Katron Allen is running like a man possessed right now. So we'll see what that meeting looks like. Are there anything that we need to know? Is there anything we need to know about the special teams unit, whether it's a positive for UCLA or a potential detriment for them?
That's probably the best group right now. Especially Mateen Bagani, who's UCLA's kicker, and I think he's the leading point getter. I haven't really checked out those stats this week, but he's been pretty solid wherever they place the ball in front of him. Coverage has been pretty decent. Kickoffs has been all right. So UCLA hasn't really their special teams hasn't really been a liability. It's just the inability to put points on the board, to get the ball downfield, and then oppositely to stop points getting on the board and stopping opponents.
It's a tough combination to overcome for any team. We have some folks who are curious because there's a lot of Penn State fans, beat reporters including myself, who have sat in the Rose Bowl press box and for a Rose Bowl, but we haven't been out there for a UCLA home game. Yeah. What is the environment like right now for this particular program? Is there a student section presence? What do you anticipate when this game kicks off? The vibes being in the building?
Well, that's going to be interesting because attendance is definitely down. I'm not exactly sure how much the normal fan, general admission fan, is going to be there, but school just started for UCLA. So the student section is going to be full, or a full list. I'm not going to say full, but it's going to be the fullest it's been all season long. So that's good for UCLA, but Penn State fans, it doesn't matter where your ticket is. You're probably going to be able to move down as close as you want. But yeah, it is a great venue. It's obviously you just talked about Penn State being in the Rose Bowl. That evening sunset, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Unfortunately, this game will probably end around 3:30, 4:30 before that can happen. But still, just coming to Pasadena, having fun, and enjoying a game where your team is definitely going to beat the home team. It should be a fun event for a lot of Penn State fans.
The new reality is Big Ten territory. You don't have to travel somewhere cold and gray and like we used to be able to kind of used to. Now you can go out to California, spend some time out there in the sunshine, watch a football game, and then head home. Mike, let's finish here. UCLA gets blown out as expected. If UCLA makes it closer than expected, and ultimately, can you give us a final score prediction for this one?
Ooh, 45-10. Penn State. Okay. Yeah. That's just what I feel. I'm like that 26-point spread. I'm like, no. that's Penn State should be able to move the ball just by running it. And then if they want to, they can fling it around. But I think UCLA is I think they'll put up a fight. But Penn State is just too good. They're just all around. And again, that was a tough game last week. But man, I was looking at that game, going, it would be amazing for either fan base to be a part of either fan base, to be a part of either media, just to be covering a game with that much emotion, tension, just high stakes. Oh, that was just a fun game on Saturday evening. So hopefully UCLA can get back to that. But yeah, Penn State's going to come in here and avenge their loss from last week, and the Bruins are going to be the victims.
Well, we will see. We're curious if there's any hangover effect coming out of Happy Valley, or perhaps this is just an extra motivated team. We'll find out on Saturday afternoon out there in Pasadena. Mike, I appreciate you. I appreciate your coverage. I was following along as the wheels were falling off the Deshaun Foster bus. You did a good job covering that. So we'll keep tabs on UCLA coverage this week. You can do that by following Mike Regalato, our UCLA home site as well, over at the 24/7 Sports Network. Mike, enjoy the rest of your day and take care.
Thank you. You have a good day. Have fun.
Good stuff from Mike, and we'll see what happens out there in terms of the crowd. I think a lot of Penn State fans were very excited, have been excited to make this matchup, maybe a little more deflated coming off the loss to Oregon, but it should be a really great experience. If you haven't spent time out in the Rose Bowl, I'd suggest getting there a little early, take a few laps, a lot of history there, some Penn State history as well. Just a cool place to be around, outside, inside. We got a chance to really spend a whole day there when Sean Clifford and company won the Rose Bowl back in 2002 to finish off that season. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Before Mike, you heard all about the Nittany Lions recruiting efforts coming out of the whiteout weekend when they had so many prospects on campus. That was just a tip of the iceberg. A lot more recruiting coverage for you over at Lions247.com. We are back on the practice field Wednesday evening. We'll get a chance to see this Nittany Lions squad, take some notes, share them with you. We'll have notebooks on offense and defense over at Lions247.com, along with photo gallery, video highlights, and commentary from James Franklin. We'll speak with him after. We'll have a few players to speak with after and kind of check the pulse of this Penn State team coming off their first loss. For now, stepping aside, I am Tyler Donahue. Thanks as always for watching or listening to the Lions 24/7 podcast.